Warzone 2 is the perfect example why sometimes live service games and sequels do not mix. As I'm sure many of you have seen, the reception towards Warzone 2 has been pretty mixed. Outside of the massive server issues and crashing that the game has been experiencing, I would personally describe Warzone 2 as a good battle royale, but a bad Warzone. Now that may appear to be a confusing statement since obviously Warzone 1 was also a battle royale, but don't worry, I'll explain what I mean. The original Warzone launched on March 10th of 2020 and ran off the Modern Warfare 2019 engine. Over the following games, additional content was added into Warzone, along with new maps until recently when Activision decided to move on from Warzone 1 and instead release a brand new Warzone, aptly named Warzone 2.0, this time running off the new MW2 engine. While I was never super into the first Warzone, it was pretty well received and obviously brought Call of Duty back to being a major competitor in the gaming market after arguably losing its step with the start of the BR trend. Without Warzone or a massively successful BR, you do have to wonder where Call of Duty would be today. Warzone though was actually the second main Call of Duty to attempt a battle royale, as the first was Blackout that released with Black Ops 4. Now Blackout was also pretty well liked, but it never got nearly as massive as Warzone ended up being, partly because it wasn't free to play. So why is Warzone 2 a good battle royale, but a bad Warzone? Well, that comes from both the changes in the design of how the game mode works, but also the core changes to the mechanics of this year's COD title. While it seems like every time I open TikTok or Twitter, someone has found some new crazy movement tech in Modern Warfare 2/Warzone 2, for the most part, the cracked movement that you saw a lot of during the original Warzone is completely gone. That standard slide cancel movement that had been so popular amongst top players in the original titles has been purposely removed from the game to produce a much slower and much more methodical Call of Duty. This in turn obviously will affect how the BR is going to play, where in the past clips of people's ankles getting broken were a dime a dozen, picking smart fights and having good gun skill are actually a lot more important in this iteration of Warzone and Call of Duty. In theory, there is absolutely nothing wrong with this, and personally, as an old person who is too lazy to play the APM simulator that was the previous few CODs at a high level, I actually enjoy these movement changes. The movement changes alone would have lasting ripple effects on Warzone if it was just those, but Warzone 2 also brings a slew of other changes that all seem to aim to slow down the game and turn it into much more of a traditional battle royale and less of the cracked out high stakes TDM simulator that the first Warzone 1 became. Warzone 2 is a much slower paced game, and you have to accept this if you're going to enjoy the title. And to be honest, once I kind of wrapped my head around that, I've been starting to enjoy it more and more. While in the past good movement could get you out of bad situations that you put yourself into, more than likely this time around, your decisions leading up to an engagement could almost determine the engagement itself. Warzone 2 though still shares many similarities to its predecessor. At the end of the day, it's still a Call of Duty battle royale built off the Modern Warfare style of game. Besides changes to the movement, Warzone 2 also brings many changes to how the game mode Warzone is played. Obviously, we're playing on a brand new map that is very different than the previous Warzone maps. This map has been pretty well received, but it does feel a lot bigger and includes a variety of iconic multiplayer maps as POIs that you can fight in and explore. But besides that, the map and the game mode also changed a ton of stuff. Now, a lot of people do say that maybe the map is too big or maybe there aren't enough players on the map, but overall the map does seem pretty cool. Now, before we get too deep into all the things that Warzone 2 changed, we do have to talk about the current server and technical issues that the game is having. As of recording this video, the game has been out for a little bit less than a week, and these servers in the game are still absolutely trash. Sometimes your ping will just rocket, you'll get packet loss, and sometimes it'll seem like the game is playing in PowerPoint mode because everyone is lagging. On top of this, people are still crashing all the time. There was a 100k Optic tournament the other night, and players in that tournament were constantly crashing. I know from my gameplay, when I'm trying to play squads with buddies, it seems like almost every few games, someone on my team ends up crashing out of the game. So obviously these are major issues with the game, but in theory they should eventually get fixed. So what I want to focus on the rest of the video is the actual design choices around Warzone 2. Now the first main thing that we're going to talk about is proximity chat, because this is a feature that's been kind of all over social media and it's really been making the rounds. Basically, it's exactly what it sounds like. When you're playing in Warzone 2 or DMZ, you now have proximity chat where you can hear enemies that are close to you. This has led to tons of fun moments that have gone completely viral on social media that I'm sure a lot of you have already seen. On the building across, on the building across. I'll ping it.
What am I coming for your asses?
Oh, he's coming. We can be friends. We can be friends.
No, fuck you. He's out here.
Oh my, I can't even shoot him. He's, oh yeah, that's what I should have been friends. Should have been friends. Oh no, his teammate's here. I need help. I need help. Oh, I'm fucking better. Proximity chat can absolutely be a fun time, but it actually does have its downsides that I don't think as many people are talking about. For example, if you're playing on console, you either have to choose between using in-game chat and proximity chat or going into a party chat. You can't talk in both of those like you can if you're on PC and you have your push to talk in game, but you're in a Discord. This will actually put you at a disadvantage because being forced to use proximity chat means you're going to give away your position basically anytime you're talking, especially if a team of people roll up on you that are using outside communication. This also goes if you're not playing with a full squad. If you're playing duos or you're playing squads with random people, you're gonna have to talk to them in-game, and using the in-game chat when you're not just trying to mess around and talk to the enemies is going to give your position away, and also all your enemies are gonna hear all your communication. So proximity chat definitely leads to some very cool moments, and it can be an absolute blast. I've been messing with people, tricking them, telling them I'm not gonna kill them, killing them, or just randomly making friends on the battlefield. You can absolutely have a great time with proximity chat, but I don't think it's all roses like some people kind of make it out to be. Now, Warzone specifically has all the game modes that you would kind of expect. There's solos, duos, squads, and then there's currently two different types of trios. One which is third-person trios, which is just standard trios but third person, and then there's a trios mode where you can actually recruit other squads to join your squad to make sort of a super squad of up to 6 people. This mode to me isn't very serious, but it is pretty fun to mess around in, and you can kind of get a death ball of 6 people rolling and kind of run around the map. Other than that, you have DMZ, which we'll talk a little bit about more later. So when you drop into the map, you have a variety of things you can do. You can go hunting and just run around looking for people to kill. You can obviously loot and just try and find cash on the map, but a lot of times what you're going to set your focus on if you don't immediately get into a gunfight is doing some of the different missions that are along the maps that include the intel missions, the bounty missions, or the missions where you go and crack safes. These are all going to give you rewards for completing them. The bounty missions are going to tell you a rough area of where an enemy is and you have to go kill him. The safe missions are going to give you 3 safes that you have to go and blow open. And then the intel missions are going to give you a spot where you have to go find intel and then you have to go upload it to one of the towers. These are all a good way to make money, and they kind of give you something to do in Warzone, because with the map being so big and with there not necessarily being enough players, you won't really be getting in constant gunfights, and this will kind of give you something to do in the downtime while also making money, which is going to be very key for buying weapons or various other things. There are also NPCs that are going to be on the map and strongholds, which are totally new to Warzone 2 and not something that was included in the original Warzone. I, for the most part, try and avoid these as they kind of just eat up your ammo, but you can find cool things in the strongholds if you desire to do them. If you go and break into one of the strongholds and you actually defuse the bomb, that is actually one of the ways that you can get your loadout. The other way that you can get your loadout is going to be a late game drop from the sky. It's just going to drop in a box and you just show up and pick one of your loadouts. Other than that, the main thing you're going to be doing is buying your singular weapons for $5,000 from one of the various buy stations. Here you can also buy your teammates back along with buy UAVs and various other equipment pieces. This is where it becomes key that you're doing those earlier missions, because otherwise you're not going to really have money to buy weapons and all that stuff, as there isn't a whole ton of cash just laying around on the map unless you find a bunch of cash registers. Overall though, it isn't hard to make money to buy your weapons, but it is a big change from Warzone 1 where now you're not going to constantly have your loadout like you used to. You can still have your weapon of choice, but you're not going to have all your perks and everything like that, usually until late game or if you go do those strongholds. Another thing semi-related to loadouts in this game is the way that they have changed looting. Now obviously I didn't play a ton of Warzone 1, so I'm not super familiar with the looting mechanics in that game. But in this game, looting is a total pain. Whether it's opening up boxes where it just spills all the contents onto the floor and you have to try and pick up exactly what you want, or when you kill someone and they drop some of their items along with having a backpack. I don't know why all of the items just aren't in the backpack. This will slow you down, especially before you get used to it, but sometimes it can also be really finicky where items will get stuck under other items and you can't pick up what you want, or worst case, sometimes items just get stuck into the map and you can't pick them up at all. Warzone 2 also includes the new Gunsmith 2.0 that shipped with Modern Warfare 2, and this takes the whole meta of guns up to another notch. Obviously, you still have all the attachments that the Gunsmith had in the original Warzone, but now you can also tune guns once they've reached max level, which allows you to mess with them to a whole nother degree. I'm personally not a huge fan of the system. I think it's way too much just to be able to play a game, but this will allow you to really tailor your weapons to exactly what you want, with the caveat that there's always going to be a handful or whatever of meta weapons and loadouts and tuning that a lot of people are just going to adhere to. To fully utilize the new Gunsmith and the weapon tuning system, you will need to level a ton of different guns because that's how all the attachment unlocks work in both Warzone and in the regular multiplayer. Now you can level all these in multiplayer, and maybe you already did before Warzone even came out, but if you didn't, it's actually not terrible to level up weapons in Warzone, especially since they'll level up from any experience that you earn while holding the weapon. So if you're doing missions while holding a specific weapon, or you get kills, obviously, all of this is going to count towards leveling up your gun, and that's just playing the game normally and not doing the super farmy stuff, which you can find guides for online. Overall, it's not too difficult to level guns, and you can get the meta classes pretty quickly if you want to, as long as you don't mind looking them up. I'm not by any means some pro Warzone player, but a lot of people right now are going for weapons with big magazines and low recoil. You'll see the TAC-56 a lot, the RPK for longer range kind of rifles, and then you'll see things like the Fennec and actually the Akimbo pistols for close range melting people. You'll also see various other weapons like the Cast-Off 7.64, the Vaznev, etc., etc. There really are a ton of different guns that you can build classes around and be able to perform perfectly well in Warzone 2. One class of gun though that has really taken a hit is the sniper class. While snipers can still be pretty strong, the ability to one-shot head someone with 3 plates has been completely removed from the game. Now you're gonna have to shoot them multiple times, and so snipers aren't necessarily as strong as they used to be. Though having them as support in a fight or just trying to do some damage or catch someone that's out in the open, they can still be very viable. Another big change to Warzone 2 is the way that the Gulag works. In the first Warzone, when you died for the first time, you'd get thrown into a 1v1 arena that was called the Gulag. If you won, you would spawn back onto the map and drop out of the sky, but if you lost, that was it. The only way to be brought back at that point was if your teammates were to buy you back. In Warzone 2, they've actually changed the Gulag into a 2v2, which in theory sounds pretty cool, especially in the occasions where you actually get thrown into the Gulag with one of your squad mates that you happen to be playing with. However, when you get put into the Gulag with a random person who either could be really bad or sometimes not even playing, and you end up losing the Gulag and you don't get to respawn, that is extremely frustrating. So I'm not a big fan of how it's 2v2. There's also the big change where now, if you wait a little bit, the jailer will spawn in, and if everyone teams up and kills the jailer, then everyone will be set free, including any dead teammates. This is a cool mechanic. I don't really have any issues with it, though very seldom will you actually kill the jailer because it involves getting the enemy team to coordinate with you, and the chances of that happening without them betraying you are honestly pretty small. The jailer though, if you do actually coordinate and work together, isn't overly hard to kill. So that's just kind of how I feel in the Gulag. I think the 1v1 Gulag was a lot better than the 2v2 Gulag, though the addition of the jailer is kind of cool. So that just leaves us with DMZ, which is Call of Duty's attempt at an escape for Tarkov mode. Now I'm not going to go super deep into DMZ because honestly I haven't played a ton of it, but in my opinion it's just okay at best. Now obviously Warzone has some of the PvE elements added into it now, but DMZ is that taken to a whole new level, with all sorts of looting and stuff on top of it. Just like Tarkov, this is a mode where if you go in and die, you're going to lose all your weapons, so your goal is to complete some of these objectives, get some cool loot, and then extract out without dying. There's actually currently an assault rifle that you can get in DMZ from doing one of the objectives that once you extract with it, you can use in both Warzone and multiplayer, which is pretty fun. One weird thing to me though is that the money in DMZ doesn't really seem to matter. If you extract with a ton of money, it isn't like you can use this money to buy cool stuff. Instead, it just gets converted to XP, which just levels up your character. There are definitely people though that like DMZ, but personally it's just not really my speed. You kind of just run around doing PvE missions with the occasional encounter with other people. So is Warzone 2 bad like so many people online are saying? Absolutely not. Other than the obviously very bad technical issues, which to be honest should be unacceptable, but it feels like sadly, us gamers as a whole have kind of just come to accept it these days. Warzone 2 is just a very different style of game than the original one, and that is totally okay. However, if you were a hardcore Warzone 1 fan, Warzone 2 might not be a game that you enjoy at all. While the game is much slower paced, as I have put more time into it, I have found myself starting to have more fun. Having proper weapons and loadouts to buy also helps a ton, so honestly I recommend looking up those meta classes because it'll make your games a lot more enjoyable. In the end, I think Warzone 2 is probably going to be just as big as the first, if not even bigger, who knows. It's just going to take some time for all the big streamers and hardcore players to adjust their playstyles to what Warzone 2 demands of you.